but I've learned the truth and am no longer a role player. So now it's time to go with our first match of the day. It's Amaz versus Frezzar. Now, Frezzar is a guy that probably a lot of people don't know of. He was just recently picked up by Fnatic, kind of like Amaz was just recently picked up by Team Liquid. So I know you play on the EU servers a lot, Forsen. Have you gotten a chance to play against Frezzar?
Yeah, for sure, man. He hasn't been in so many tournaments, but he played in the open qualifier for the DreamHack Summer one, and he actually qualified, but then he got knocked out. I played him a lot on ladder, you know. He's one of those players that you usually meet when you're around like top 100, top 50, you know. He stays around that place. He's known to be a very good Miracle Rogue player as well as I, so I'm looking forward for this game because it started with Miracle.
Yeah, exactly. We have Miracle, and it's facing off against Handlock. And as anybody knows who watched the HyperX invitation, I know you actually got a chance to play in that, you know, firsthand how strong Handlock is right now. It's completely devastated that tournament. Guys like RDU sweeping whole players just with Handlock, but Miracle Rogue was actually also pretty strong in there with a few Naxxramas techs. So walk us through what you see from these opening hands, and it does look like, you know, the Miracle's on the coin.
So it's very, very interesting that Amaz actually choose to play Handlock here because he has a lot of success. He had a lot of success with his Sue, so I was expecting that. But Frezzar actually got the best opening you can get here versus Handlock. He got the Blood Mage Thanos on turn 3. That means that his opponent next turn is gonna have 4 mana. That means he can either play a Giant or a Drake for 4 mana, but he can't coil that Thanos. Now he doesn't have an Eviscerate or Backstab, so he can't really kill that Giant, but if he had that, that would be really, really strong. So
okay, so he's looking at 8 damage to the face if he can't clear that away. And I guess as Handlock, how do you play that versus the Miracle matchup? Because you know, Miracle, you tend to try to clear things out early on, but taking away 8/8s is a little rough without saps.
Yeah. The thing is, like as a Handlock, you want to have pressure on the Miracle Rogue at all time. And if you don't have those removal, as Eviscerate or Backstab or Sap early on, it's really, really bad for you. It's like, it doesn't matter how many minions you have because you really need that removal so he doesn't get that faceless next turn, for example. So he's thinking about shivving that because he needs to damage that no matter what. That's like first, yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, now, I was looking at RDU's Handlock deck that did so well in the HyperX Invitational, and he actually subbed out a lot of taunt givers for, I think it was the Sludge Belcher, which you're seeing in a lot of decks just because it's so difficult to remove. So I shouldn't see too many of those, but what you are looking at least from the Handlock, yeah, there's a Sludge Belcher he's about to play right there, and a 6/6 Van Cleef. So is Van Cleef the answer to dealing with these Golems or Sludge Belchers, or is that really just a strong opening for Amaz?
The Van Cleef is a really strong play considering Amaz only had 5 mana. He can't Siphon Soul it, and if he wants to use an Owl, he only has 3 more mana to play a minion, which he can't do then. So the Van Cleef play there was really, really strong. His response though, he did pick up the Auctioneer here, so... But it does only have 5 mana, and no removal spells still, so this is pretty bad.
Yeah, so I think at best you could Auctioneer, then prep Conceal, but at some point you're actually going to have to draw, you know, the damage to win the game, and you're on kind of a clock with Giants coming out of the hands, and, you know, there's even, you know, more Moltens and Siphon Souls and a lot of, just a lot of options for Amaz's Handlock. So, what is Frezzar looking for to come back from this? I mean, there's only so many things you can sap.
Yeah, I think he's gonna just play the Loathab here to prevent his opponent from dealing with 6/6 Van Cleef with Siphon Soul next turn. Next turn he's gonna have more options considering he can conceal and then start chaining those spells with the prep and hopefully pick up a Backstab or 2 to keep drawing those cards. That's, I think, his only chance here.
So he does play the Loathab, but at the same time, you know, Miracle Rogues don't run any taunts, so he's just going to keep taking 8 damage. So at what point as a Handlock, are you playing for board control, or do you just want to say, hey, look, I have more momentum, and I'm just going to keep swinging into you for 8 to the face?
Well, it's really important, like, you don't need taunts early on in the game versus Miracle Rogue. You need them later on when Leroy Shadow Step is a possibility. You do, however, need pressure with Giants, so the Miracle Rogue can't just feel free to do whatever he wants. He needs to actually use damage removing spells instead of card recycling spells. So that's top priority.
Top priority. All right, so more taunts gonna come out there. You can see the extra. So there's like there's 2 taunts out, 8. What is that? 10, and then 11 active damage on the field. And oh my god,
Amaz actually tapped last there, which is quite surprising. You always want to start your turn by. Yeah, I said that was a mistake. You always want to start your turn by tapping. You want to plan out your turn so you know you give yourself more options. But it wasn't a huge mistake. But I mean, actually it was, because he could have played that giant that he life tapped. So it was quite a big mistake in this scenario.
Oh yeah, that's true. If he had tapped first, then yeah, more giants come out, and he does draw into his second mountain giant, and he will be able to play that next turn along with maybe another tap or another couple of taunts. But at this point, it's Miracle Rogue. You know, Frezzar is drawn into at least one of the saps, so he can get rid of that 8 damage. But how is it that Frezzar is supposed to regain control of this matchup since Amaz has such a strong early start?
Well, this is an auctioneer turn for sure. I'm really surprised by the fact that he's actually attacking with his minions before he draws cards here. But his plan is probably to conceal and sap that giant back to the shadows. But you should always like start your turn by recycling cards with the auctioneer. You might get better options than what he got now, but it didn't matter in this case. But it can matter. So they both did kind of a blunder by like drawing cards last in their turns.
Yeah, and both of these decks are very card specific. Like, there's generic options, but you always want to have more of them, and so drawing them first, always kind of the best option. So with the sap, that means there's 2 Molten Giants in Amaz's hand, but oh, the stealth can't save you from Soulfire.
No.
And that is going to be a board. Yeah. Shadow Flame. Shadow Flame costs 0 mana, that'd be pretty OP.
Molten Giants in this matchup is not very useful, because if you're low enough to play a cheap Molten Giant, you're most likely dead anyway, because they have such a great burst potential in Miracle Rogue. So they're not very useful, but they can be sometimes if the Miracle Rogue players overextend by damaging his opponent too much.
Alright, now there is a Leroy in hand for Amaz. So his win conditions are coming up here pretty quickly, but instead, it looks like he is just going to drop the Ragnaros. Is this the best play for him, or should he try to set something else up on the board? And it does look like he does drop the Rag.
I do believe that this can be risky. Yeah, this is really risky now. That it didn't hit the Acid Drake, it's really risky. I would have preferred playing the Mountain Giant. I mean, he could easily be dead here if he has the right cards. But we know that he doesn't have a Leroy. So he did, however, top deck the BGH, which is actually quite huge.
Yeah, that's kind of ridiculous.
But the thing is here, he's at 5 health here.
And no Earthen Rings.
He needs to cycle for an Earthen Ring. I think that's like, he needs to expect Leroy or Hellfire Soulfire combos. Like, he needs to know that he's most likely dead next turn. So either we play for the win, or he plays for surviving with the Farseer.
I'm not sure how you survive through this.
The only way you survive this is you play the like the only way you can get above 6 health, which is Leroy range or Shadow Flame or Hellfire Soulfire, is you play the Auctioneer and you backstab that Ragnaros, hope for a prep so you can sap the Ragnaros, and then a Farseer. But he's gonna go for the BGH play, which is, I mean, you can hope that he doesn't have the Leroy or Hellfire Soulfire. It's fine, but we know that that's not the case.
Yeah, and with the Leroy coming down, this is going to be Amaz taking game number 1 off of Frezzar.
Be the pick, but Warrior is a pretty solid deck as well to beat Handlock, especially if you have that BGH. And it looks like, yeah, it's the Warrior. No, it's not actually.
No, it's not. It's going to be a counter handlock. So this is, I guess if you can't beat him, join them. And
join them, indeed.
hand locks for both sides. So I guess that's kind of like, how do you beat Hunter? Well, you play Hunter against it.
Yeah.
Or although I know you actually just played versus I think it was Backspace in Deck Wars, and you actually beat his Hunter with like the new style of Druid with things like Kel'Thuzad and a lot of big taunts in it. So.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Druid is not really a good counter to Hunters. I guess I got the right combination of cards that game. You don't really
Yeah.
want to play into Hunt because Hunter's Mark is so good. It's just that's why Handlock gets crushed. That's why Ramp Taunt Druid gets crushed. Hunter's Mark is basically deal 7 damage to giants for 0 mana. Like it's just too good of a tempo. Um, yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of tempos, so we can see the opening hands here. There's actually no giants in the hand for Frezzar, so he's hitting a weird turn 4 here. Draws a faceless, but is not going to have a good turn 4 option.
Yeah. I mean, like these early turns, you don't want the coin in this matchup, simply because you cannot coin out Mountain Giant, and also the fact that if you coin out a Drake, it will be at 8 HP, and if your opponent then plays a turn 4 Mountain Giant, that's really bad. A 4/8 Drake versus a 8/8 creature is never good. So the player going first usually has the advantage in this matchup.
Right, no coin. You can hit that 4-drop, and you can see that's exactly what Amaz did. Drops the Mountain Giant, and that means that, well, there's counter, or the what do you do to counter that? Frezzar, he's only got so many options. He can try to taunt things up. He's got Lotheb. Is that the right drop, or do you faceless right now?
I mean, if he faceless, he has to keep in mind that his opponent still has the coin. He can coin Siphon Soul, so that's not really a good play here. He could play the Lothab himself and then Siphon Soul next turn. That would be, I think, the optimal play here. But he's gonna go for the risky play, hoping that his opponent does not have a Siphon Soul. But we know that he has one in his hand, so that's really bad news for Frezzar. He's gonna take a lot of damage here.
Yeah, and so at least for Amaz, seems like he's kind of got all the answers so far. Came out with a Molten and then right into pretty much all the options that he needed there. The play to counter this out, though, I guess he, after losing that, Siphon Soul for Siphon Soul, the Sludge Belcher comes out, and I guess that's kind of the same as the ability to taunt up those watchers, but it's a little bit more active, and it's a little stickier too. So Frezzar has managed to take care of the giant problem, but where does he go from here?
Oof. I mean, he did pick up a Drake here, which is kind of good news. However, I feel like you want to play a Lothab this turn, because Lothab has 5 damage to kill the Sledge Vulture, but the Drake, if it survives until next turn, it can get Argus and also be able to kill the Sludge Belcher in 1 hit. So he kind of need to think about the possibility of an Owl here, Owl and Mortal Coil, if he wants to play the Twilight Drake here.
Yeah, Maz does have an Owl in hand. He wants to go for that one. He's got pretty much nothing but options, but how does he deal with the 10 health on that Drake out there? If it survives the next turn, it's definitely getting taunted.
Yeah, it is for sure, but he has an Owl, so it's not gonna... I mean, he doesn't have a Mortal Coil though, so he needs to do a Soulfire play or Hellfire if he wants to kill that Drake. And... oh, he's gonna go for the Black Knight here. Pretty good play.
Yeah, Black Knights gets a lot of value out of that one, and that's I mean, at least as far as board advantage, 2v1 and the taunt out. So there's definitely more to play from Frezzar's hand. You can go Lotheb and then into chaining some taunts in there, but it does appear as if Amaz is maybe a few steps ahead, but he hasn't actually taken any damage, so that'll put him out of Molten Giant range for a long time.
Yeah, we see that Frezzar picked up the Mortal Coil here, which is not really that great, considering the health of the opponent's minions. He does have a Ragnaros as well. Does he want to go for a Ragnaros play here? It's a possibility. He doesn't need that Argus right now, because his opponent is only at 8 mana, and he doesn't have to be afraid of like Leroy power-whelming faceless combo right now. So he can play a bit greedy here and try to get some board control back in the game without taunting.
Yeah, that would be the very aggressive option. He's going to go for the Lotheb play and just trade things out. Double taunts up, so at least that keeps him safe from taking any more damage, but this should be a very big turn for Amaz. He's got a lot of taunt potential. He can even heal up, but of course he doesn't need to, so it looks like just the Owl, if I'm reading that hand correctly.
Yeah, the Owl is for sure the optimal play here.
So he's going to silence that Twilight Drake out. Twilight
Oh,
Drake's...
big mistake by Amaz. He thought he could kill the Drake with the 1-2 because he silenced it. But oh yeah, he had to taunt it up. He tried to attack the 4-1 with his 1-2 there. But when you silence something, it also loses taunt.
Oh, and that dropped it back behind the taunt wall. Luckily, he was able to still take it out by using that Argus, so it wasn't quite as big a mistake as it looked like early on. But it's going to clear off most of the board, and I mean, Frezzar is going to get into Molten Giant range here in a little bit, and he does have the Shadow Flame in case he wants to clear things off that way, like with maybe like a Leroy drop if you want to do that. But you got to save that for your win condition.
Yeah, for sure. You might sometimes you want to use that Leroy Shadow Flame to get that board control back, but Leroy Shadow Flame here not very good considering the health of all the minions. It will be such an overkill. Hellfire could be a possibility here, but I think it's gonna go for the coil.
Yeah, coil is just great to get your card draw on and at least increase the number of options that he has. And right now, it's kind of what Frezzar needs. He is going to be able to trade out relatively effectively, but like you said, he didn't use that Hellfire to do that. Feels like that would have been a little bit better, but he saves the mana, drops that big Ragnaros, which is going to be playing right into the Sylvanas coming out from Amaz.
Yeah, it was extremely good that Ragnaros hit the minion. Like, you always want to hit the minions in this matchup. Hitting face is just so bad because of Molten Giants gets out earlier. Oh, he picked up an owl though. That owl is actually huge, as Admirable would say. That owl was huge.
Definitely huge. So the Owls have really turned this game around. We had one from Amaz that silenced the Azure Drake, and now this one is gonna silence Sylvanas. So there's no possible way of stealing that Ragnaros. So now if you're Frezzar, you actually have to, or if you're Amaz, you have to figure out a different way of dealing with the Ragnaros. And he doesn't have any Siphon Souls in his hand just yet. He does have things like Soulfire in there, but how does he clear the Rag?
Oof, I'm not quite sure. I think. Yeah, I mean, like right now he doesn't have the options in his hand. He needs to tap into something.
Yeah, we'll see what he draws there. It's going to be just a solitary owl used to clear out absolutely everything. Power overwhelming, proving pretty overwhelming there. And now Amaz, he does draw that Shadow Flame.
Yeah.
How's he going to clear things with it? I mean, he's got a giant, but it's 10 mana.
Yeah, I mean, he could sacrifice his Leroy here. That's a possibility in some way.
Leroy's only going to give you that 6 damage and then Soulfire afterwards, but...
You could also play something like Ancient Watcher Shadow Flame into Soulfire, the Ragnaros.
Yeah, it still leaves a 1 health Ancient Watcher out there too.
He's gonna tap and pick up a Sludge Belcher here, which is a pretty good draw, but it doesn't help the fact that there's a Ragnaros on the board.
Yeah, so Rag can, if it hits face, actually, it might help Amaz.
It will help him for sure, especially if he has a taunt up.
Yeah, that'll leave the taunt up. Neither one of the minions on Frezzar's field can actually attack, so they might not be too useful. And he will actually throw down a taunt, pick up the Sludge Belcher and the heal from the Earthen Ring. Do you think that a heal from the Earthen Ring was actually the right move here? Because it does put him further
I'm not sure. I would actually prefer the Ancient Watcher, so you have something on the board that you can Shadow Flame next turn. You don't really need the heal or the damage right now. You're not in range of lethal just yet with only Leroy Soulfire. But it's good if he picks up something like Faceless Manipulator here. He will have lethal, even if one of those minions dies. So it's like a plan ahead move.
Yeah, it's always something to watch out for hand locks. You can kind of die at any time if they find a way to get past either your taunt wall or, like you said, that big faceless manipulator play. So tapping in for Frezzar, he actually, he's going for that heal right now, and it's the same kind of idea. Just throw the big taunt wall and kind of letting Ragnaros swing over and over again. Amaz sooner or later is going to draw into Siphon Soul, but looks like he's just got all giants for now.
Yeah, he did pick up a mountain giant there. He could play it and Soulfire, which is possibly the play. Yeah, he's gonna go for that play, which clears the board, swings the tempo back in his game. I mean, it's looking pretty good here now for Amaz.
This is so back and forth. First, you have Frezzar with a Ragnaros that you can't deal with, and then all of a sudden Amaz with one Shadow Flame. It's right back in it, and he's not necessarily in really good Molten range. You can still play them and maybe try to get something out on the board. But for Frezzar, he's got, I guess, more affordable Moltens, but really not a whole lot of good options.
That's all he got, really. I mean, both of his Molten Giants cost 7 right now. He could play a Molten Giant here and just like hope that his opponent doesn't have the lethal, which is fairly unlikely at this point in the game where they draw so many cards. Like, he should have the lethal, but I don't know, maybe he needs to tap here for something like a Sun Fury Protector.
Yeah, of course, if you're worried about being in lethal range at 17, you tap and you're definitely going to be in there.
Yeah.
From like, Leroy Faceless Soulfire or something. So looks like he's just going to drop the 7 mana. This is such a hard decision. There's no good way to deal with the Sludge Belcher, and he just needs a taunt out there on the field, but he's just 1 mana away from being able to drop a giant and taunt it.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it might be worth the risk here tapping. Like, you have to compare the odds of him having lethal compared to like you drawing your Sun Fury Protector. But he's just gonna drop a naked Molten Giant here, which is fine play. It's fine.
Okay, so let's see. For Amaz, he's got 3 damage on the field. He got 6 from Leroy and then another 4 from Soulfire. And, the Hellfire there, too.
Yeah, the Hellfire actually makes him 1 damage of lethal right now. It's actually 1 damage of lethal. Which is... I mean... Yeah, he's gonna tap for something here. Oh, that's a great...
Oh my god,
great top deck.
Draws the Siphon Soul. Alright, well, doesn't get much better than this for Amaz. He can continue to delay the giants off the field. I mean, this does give Frezzar like another turn to draw instead of facing immediate lethal damage. But of course, being 1 damage off, a little bit unfortunate there for Amaz. He'll heal himself up to 20s, so that does put him out of some big Molten Giant plays. But for Frezzar, it's all about what he draws next to try to deal and bring himself back in the game. He's got a 4 mana Molten Giant, so that's going to be a really good card for him.
For sure.
Drawing into the Soulfire.
But his hand is super awkward right now. I mean, yeah, he's gonna tap because I don't see any good plays that he could do right there. And he taps into a Shadow Flame, which is quite the good card here. But it doesn't help him a lot because he still has that 1/2 creature after you Shadow Flame the Sludge Vulture.
And so right now, Amaz kind of in the driver's seat, but he doesn't really have a good way of dealing with that the 9/9 out there. What do you do to deal with that? I guess you can throw down your own giant, but that's a whole 10 mana. So is this a big swing for Frezzar?
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have a Shadow Flame here. That he could have done something with Leroy Shadow Flame. I guess you could taunt some stuff up here, but you have to be afraid of a Shadow Flame here. If you do that play, you need some way to get through, and I think you need to tap, and that's what it's gonna do. And he picks up a Farsi here, and that's a dead card right now. That's a pretty dead card, I must say.
Yeah, 3 health, not going to get you anywhere. So looks like he is going to throw down a Leroy, and I mean, that does allow him to trade out versus the giant, but now he's like, he doesn't have the 6 damage. You can't faceless that later on for burst. But I mean, Frezzar keeps getting lower and lower. He's only sitting at 6 health after that
Yeah,
attack, so
he sacrificed his leader there because he knows that he doesn't need that right now. He just needs board control to finish him off when his opponent is that low. So he sacrificed the leader there, all for the greater good. And Frezzar picks up a big game hunter. Not really what you want to see right now.
would have been good a couple turns ago.
Yeah, I mean, what you do here, you can't Hellfire really because your opponent, you're at such a low life pool that a Soulfire would kill you, or a Hellfire. Even though Amaz used one, there could be another one.
Right, and I mean, at this point, you're 20 cards through your deck, so you have to assume that your opponent's seen almost every card that he wants up until this point. So, you know, this would be a great turn for Moltens, but he unfortunately doesn't have any more of those.
Yeah.
So,
like the only play I see here is Big Game Hunter Shadow Flame. It's really awkward here, but I believe it's the only play.
yeah, you can stay alive with that, but at the same time, your win conditions are kind of gone at this point for Frezzar. I mean, he can faceless Leroy, but he has to deal with the taunts first, and doesn't look like he's really going anywhere. And he picked this deck in as, you know, sort of the mirror match to try to deal with Amaz's Handlock. And I mean, after we've seen Handlock just sweep through the HyperX Invitational yesterday, looks like it's kind of doing the same thing right off the bat. Here in
it does decide to Soulfire that Sledge Belcher and do nothing more that turn. He had 10 mana remaining, ending that turn. I don't know what his game plan is here, because this is gonna take more and more damage even every turn. So if you don't tap right now, when will you tap? Like,
yeah, and that does put him within range of lethal.
It
and
does.
It's gonna be Soulfire from Amaz, and that'll grab him game number 2. Versus Frezzar. So it's a best of 5, which means Frezzar is kind of on game or point right now.
Yes, it's another kinds of decks. But he decided to play this after his Handlock, which means that he thinks that this warrior is actually less successful against Handlock than Handlock itself.
Oh, that's a bold statement to make, especially since now, well, this is his last option here. Frezzar, it's a best of 1. Keep in mind this opening round, so this is do or die, and nothing too telling based off his mulligan hand. Just standard warrior cards in there. It does have that Sludge Belcher, but that's kind of standard in most warrior decks, especially considering that, you know, he's going for much more of a late game style for his warrior.
Yeah, Amaz picked up a pretty good start here. 2 Twilight Drakes in his starting hand. That's really strong against warriors. They need that Shield Slam or Execute to deal with those appropriately. However, we see that Frezzar picked up an Execute, and that's one of the cards you're looking for in this matchup as a warrior. He's thinking about whether or not he should mulligan away the Sludge Belcher, but since this is such a slow matchup, the Sludge Belcher is actually fine to keep, and that he decided to keep it, so that's really good.
Yeah, and he is on the coin, so he'll be able to play it maybe a little bit faster if he gets into any kind of trouble. But Handlock, not the greatest, for Amaz. I mean, the Twilight Drakes are great, but you know, there's no giants in there quite yet. The Twilight Drakes. So theoretically, there are like 6 cards you need to deal with. The 2 Drakes and the 4 giants. As far as like big things to get past. How does Warrior deal with Handlock? Do you just try to like slow roll them to late game and hope to draw into your executes and seal slams?
Well, you try to get enough removal for the first couple of giants or drakes, and then try to pressure them so much that you can you don't want to damage them down to Molten Giant range. That's really important in this matchup. You want that kill with Gromage on turn 8 or 9 with your Whirlwind or the new weapon that I just can't seem to remember the name of. The one that gives Whirlwind when you use the last charge. Death's Bite, I think.
Yeah, Death's Bite.
Yeah.
That's a really cool combo too, because you can play the Death's Bite and then swing with it the turn before, and then just swing, activate the Gromash, and swing for another 10.
You can actually activate Gromash on turn 8, which is very huge in this matchup. You can swing. You can equip the weapon on turn 7, swing once, take him down to 18 life, and then next turn you can hit him again, take him down to 10, enrage the Gromage and kill him. Like, that's such a good thing that Warriors got for this matchup.
Yeah, and it happens really fast too, and you play most of it just from your hand. So unless you have some form of, like Harrison Jones or Ooze, you really don't have a lot of options to deal with the weapon. You just sit it out there, play the Gromash, and there's no taunts up. Previously, you really couldn't do that without a card like, Inner Rage or, the coin to play something else like a Shield Slam to enrage him. But now Deathbite really, really strong in the burst when you get to level 6. So a couple of turns in, and there's the Drake out for Amaz.
It's a
Plays
second
with 9
Drake.
health.
Yeah, the first one got killed by the Execute that he kept in his starting hand. The second Drake is gonna be a lot harder for him to deal with. He does, however, have that shield block in hand, so there's a possibility that he could actually kill this Drake right now by using the coin, armor up, shield block, and shield slam. But he decides to play the Sludge Belcher instead. I'm not sure why. I think the correct play would have been to kill that, because now there's a possibility of faceless.
Oh, that is true. You'd faceless. Do you faceless the Drake to taunt it, or you just grab the Sludge Belcher?
I mean, maybe this is actually a Sylvanas turn now. If you play the Sylvanas right now, next turn you can Shadow Flame it. You don't attack the Sludge Belcher. You just pass turn and try to Shadow Flame it next turn and steal something big.
All right, yeah, that does mean that as far as stuff to put out on the floor, Frezzar does have to play around that Shadow Flame and know that at any point in the game, his board is just gone. And that's one of the strengths of Handlocks. Like, they can build up their side, but you really can't build up yours, because then you just get Shadow Flamed and lose all that tempo.
Yeah, for sure. So he needs to deal with this board here. He has a Sylvanas of his own. He has a Faceless as well. And a Sylvanas here is not a bad play, because if Amaz decides to Shadow Flame, Frezzar will actually be the one who steals the last minion, because Amaz played his Sylvanas first. So playing a Sylvanas against the Sylvanas is always a good play, almost. But he does have some other options here as well. He has to anticipate that Shadow Flame though, because Amaz did not decide to attack with his Drake. So he needs to expect the Shadow Flame, and playing a Sylvanas here is the best counterplay to that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the only thing that, counters the Handlock is the Handlock. What counters the Sylvanas? Well, another Sylvanas in there. So at this point, when you Shadow Flame that, it's actually going to be really, really good for Frezzar. It'll steal, the Drake right back away. And I guess it does depend on the order that you play the Sylvanas is in. So at this point, if he chooses to Shadow Flame the Sylvanas, who gets what?
Okay, so if he chooses to Shadow Flame the Sylvanas here, the Sludge Belcher was played first. So the Sludge Belcher will actually summon the 1-2, and then the Shadow Flame, the Battle Cry of the Sylvanas, the first Sylvanas played, Amaz Sylvanas, will go off, stealing the 1-2. But he silenced that, so that's not a problem now. But if he didn't silence that, he would steal the 1-2, and then he would steal either the Drake or the 1-2 back. So it was a 50-50 gamble there.
Yeah, it's a 50-50 until suddenly Owl, and then it turns way back in Amaz's favor. Silences the Sylvanas, gets the 1-2, and has the Owl out on the field. Now it's up to Frezzar to find a way to clear all this stuff. Not a lot of big board clear options in his hand. Like, he does have the shield slam, so that's good for 2, and the shield blocks in his deck as well. So I guess that does mean 5 and 7 and 9 he can at least take out the Drake.
You need to use your shield slam right now, because when your opponent has pressure, you won't be able to build up armor. So you actually need to use this shield slam before that gets to the point. I mean, Execute is good to have, but it's not something you will use right now. He's thinking probably about facelessing the Drake and shield slamming Execute it or something, but I do believe that the only play here is getting 9 armor and shield slamming that Drake.
Yeah, so there aren't really any good faceless targets out there right now. He's coming up on the 8 mana turn, so that does mean Rag is an option. I don't think you do anything like Siphon Soul crazy right here. So, Ragnaros is out there. You can faceless something, but there's not really a good target, so it looks like a Rag for Amaz.
Yeah. I mean, the rag is kind of awkward actually.
I mean, what do you do here? Do you Earthen Ring and then I don't
I
know, try to
mean,
taunt?
like, I think that he tries to get past that goal without using the rag right now. You want to play the rag when there's something big you can hit with it. Like a 1-3 goal is not really a good target for rag. But he decides to play it anyway because I think he's afraid of another shield slam. So he wants to remove that armor for his opponent.
Yeah, that does mean that I guess if he had a shield slam, he could like shield slam then execute, but that's a lot of removal on just one target.
So he needs some kind of ping here with the execute. He does have a rag of his own. He does have a faceless of his own. So
oh
he
baby,
has no way of removing that Ragnaros without using shield block and top decking something like a ping, a cruel taskmaster. But he's gonna play his own Ragnaros before facelessing, and I do agree with that play because it's more mana efficient. You get the same creature. The only difference is you can't armor up, but you can use the faceless at a later time to faceless something else.
That's true. If this rag doesn't hit the rag, which looks like it does
Yeah.
not, that means that that's there's time on the clock. How long does that rag stay out there? And the answer is, well, the Siphon Soul in Amaz's hand might be the option that he chooses to go for, but no, he's just gonna double taunt things up.
Yeah.
And then goes for the faceless.
Yeah, of course. Another reason for not using faceless first is if the rag would miss, which it did for him, he could now faceless it the rag again. So, but this is looking very. He needs something like a brawl here. He needs a brawl pickup. That's for sure. This is too much to deal with right now. 2 rags and a molten giant taunted.
Yeah, that's pretty rough to deal with, and like you said, basically the only thing that gets through everything and puts Frezzar back in control is something along the lines of that brawl. So he has Shield Slam to get to it. He has enough mana to both Shield Slam and use the faceless. So
yeah, he probably needs a shield block here. Like if he doesn't
shield block, yeah.
It's I mean, the other play is like, no, there is no other play. He needs a shield block here, and that's for sure.
And he does actually go for the shield block. We'll see what he grabs off that.
Bad RNG. He hit the 2-3. That's so bad for him. He could have actually maybe came back in this game by hitting an 8-8 Ragnaros, but now it's looking so bad. And Amaz decides to play the Farseer, which is like, I don't agree with that play, because the only thing you can lose to is Brawl. And by playing that 3-3 creature, if your opponent top decks a Brawl here, and the Farseer survives, he can actually make a comeback in this game. But yeah, that's not the case. He picks up a Shield Slam, and that's it.
Yep, so GG. That'll be the last and final game, a 3-0 sweep for Amaz. So kind of pulling an RDU from yesterday. That was very